is the president taking executive action to cancel some level of student debt still on the table? And like, when is that gonna?
Yes, still on the table, still on the table. So just to play out what Ron Klain was talking about, so as you said, it ends August 31st. We have to then decide whether it's extended. And what you look at is, even though the economy is very strong, we created more jobs last year than any year in history. Sure. Even though that's the case, we know, as we've been talking about, costs are too high, and certainly not having to pay back student loans. Nobody's had to pay $1, a cent, anything in student loans since Joe Biden's been president. And if that can help people ease the burden of costs in other parts of their life, that's an important thing to consider. That's a big part of the consideration. So between now and August 31st, it's either going to be extended or we're going to make a decision, as Ron referenced, about canceling student debt.
Okay, so that was Jen Psaki on a recent live taping of the Pod Save America podcast, and she decided to give us hope, I guess. Yes, it could still happen, and it could happen relatively recently. They're gonna make some sort of decision before August. There was caveats there. There was some framing to the topic that I don't necessarily like, David, but Jen Psaki does imply that there is still a chance that cancellation as well as an extension could happen before the election. What do you think?
I'll use a sports analogy. This is a basketball layup. This is a gimme putt. I mean, this is a no-brainer if you're looking at where Joe Biden is politically. It would be huge for students. He could time it out in August when people are going back to college campuses at the end of the summer and get a lot of play out of it. And there's no reason not to, right? I mean, our government has given so many breaks to so many corporations and so many wealthy people. We have been investing in our younger people when you give them student loans, interest-free student loans and whatnot. This would be related to that. And it just, for so many reasons. And also because Joe Biden, this is a key plank for progressives. And if Joe Biden wants to try to improve his relationship with the Democratic base, he has to do this.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, I have a problem with what I heard in that video, and I am hoping that you will be able to tell me how I'm wrong. You have more experience than me, more knowledge than me, and we're gonna see if I'm naive or wrong here. So she says it could happen, but she says now, and this is just repeating what Biden has said. This isn't anything new from Jen Psaki. She says, but he'd prefer for it to come through legislation. That makes it more permanent. And at least one of the Pod Save America guys agreed with that framing. An executive order isn't as permanent as legislation would be. And I don't like that framing at all, especially on this topic. Because for me, what does it mean to say that it's more permanent? Once he cancels it, what's the idea that either politically or in terms of law, the Republicans would come back into power and they'd return the debt? I don't even know legally how that would work, but let's say they were to. Would that be potentially the most unpopular political move ever made by a modern political party? That people who had been relieved of debt, perhaps for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years at that point, would suddenly have tens of thousands of dollars of debt thrown onto them by the incoming political party? That to me just seems so inconceivable that I can't believe that they believe it. And so it leaves me to think, no, that's weaseling out of it. That's implying, well, we're saying we could do it, but we really don't want to. So this is sort of cover. I don't know. Does any of that make sense? What do you think?
No, it does make sense, and that's a fair criticism and a great analysis of where the situation stands and how it would play out politically if, in fact, they rescinded it through an executive order. They would never go back. But I think my sense and my take on this is that Joe Biden has always preferred to do things through, the legislative process. He's not closing the door to an executive order, but I got the sense that Jen Psaki didn't want to get out ahead of Joe Biden, get herself in trouble by saying, "Oh yeah, we might definitely do this by executive order." She's sort of couching it in a way so that if Joe Biden happens to watch this, he is still the one who's making the decision, and he may for now say, let's give it a few more months and see what we can do legislatively before ultimately I have to decide whether in fact we're going to do it through an executive order. And that's my sense, just Jen Psaki not wanting to get out in front of her skis.
Okay, that's interesting. I appreciate that. But maybe I shouldn't get out in front of my skis too. Anyway,
no, but it's a valid concern. And if there's a chance that Joe Biden is going to say, if we can't get it done legislatively, then we're not going to do it. If there's even a chance that he might do that, that would be horrible. And it's worth pointing that out right now and putting out, all the flags and everything out on all the warning signals to people that, okay, if Joe Biden still thinks there's a possibility he might not do this because he can't get done legislatively, wow.
Yeah. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.